Let's go chasing butterflies. Let's go climb a tree. I'm the winner, you're the prize. Come and laugh with me. Let's run barefoot in the sand.
That sound has soul, has spirit, has love. That's the voice and the swinging piano stylings of a very fine jazz singer and songwriter by the name of Betty Bryant. Or Coolness B, and this is a love affair of music.
Born in 1929 in Kansas City, a mecca in the jazz age, whose own brand of music was once described as having an irresistible, joyous beat and swing. It made it the ideal setting for a young and vibrant girl to fall in love with the rich sounds and lively atmosphere.
Kansas City is considered a jazz town, and Charlie Parker is from Kansas City, and he played with Jay McShann, who was my mentor and my friend when I was old enough to actually be in the business. But when I was a little girl, when I was about 12 years old, I started liking Jay McShann, the blues piano player, and I used to stretch my fingers so that I could reach a tenth. When I was 12 years old, my music teacher couldn't even do that. So I was doing like Schumann, and there was a piece called Aufschwan, and they actually had it written for people that couldn't reach far enough to jump an octave. And I could actually reach the chord, which was sort of amazing at that age. I could play blues and walk tenths.
What drew you to that particular style of music so young?
In those days, people had pianos like people have television sets now. So everybody had, an old uprighter. Everybody played the piano, and you just started out playing boogie woogie or something really simple. Everybody. It's just part of our nature, Boogie woogie, more blues changes. Little kids, It's just, you grew up doing it. I wasn't special in that.
Betty told us about one whole year while her parents were off in Thailand. After clubs were closed, everyone would go to Betty's for jam sessions all night.
Did everyone just know you had a baby grand piano?
Yeah, pretty much so. The community, the after hours jazz or jam session community was pretty small, so everybody didn't just automatically come to my house. We would gather at some place, and everybody would say, well, let's go over to Betty's. Who's got something to drink? Or, whatever. And there was all these bootleg places where you could go buy booze after hours, and we would do that and take it over to my house because I had more space than anybody else, and we had the baby grand, which was hot stuff. So it was mostly just people coming over to play the piano and drink and sing. We were really into music. It wasn't like making out and that kind of stuff going on. It was mostly people that wanted to play music.
So did people take turns at the piano?
A jam session is not orchestrated. It's like if you hear something sounds good and you want to join in, you just do. It's just move over. It's just you just get into it. It's very freeing. Yeah, I mean we just really had fun. Make up stuff as you go along, or figure out chord progressions you wanted to follow. I remember one time I asked somebody if they knew the changes to Honeysuckle Rose, and they said no. So I started playing, and he said, oh, you mean Scrapple from the Apple. Because Charlie Parker had written a whole song around those same changes, but it was called Scrapple from the Apple. So, so lingo would be different. But the chords would be the same, 12-bar blues changes. They used to have things where the saxophone player would like go out onto the street, go down the street, go around the block, and the rhythm section would just keep going. And you know, they'd go down the street and keep playing, and they'd come back, you know, and the rhythm section never stopped, and nobody ever misses a beat. Yeah. People would come over and we'd play all night long. It would be daylight when they'd go home. It's wonderful, wonderful music.
Betty's father was an educator. Her grandfather, a renowned speechwriter who once wrote speeches for Frederick Douglass, the famous African-American human rights activist in the time of the Civil War. Her mother was a housewife.
But then she actually came back to school and graduated college with me at Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas.
We found this newspaper article in your scrapbook. Miss Betty Ann Bryant, art major at Washburn College, would add sparkle to anyone's Christmas stocking if Santa just accidentally left her there, huh? The Kansas City charmer is going to spend this Yuletide in Nashville, Tennessee, where she's accompanying her parents, Mr. and Mrs. G.T. Bryant, to the Kappa National Convention.
An all-around girl, Betty not only dabbles in art, she spends each summer at the Lake Placid Resort, where she gets a good workout in tennis, swimming, and other sports, and amuses herself playing either Bach or boogie compositions on the piano.
And the very next week, before we even got to Nashville, my grandpa dropped dead. So it was a weekly paper, and my family was in it 2 weeks in a row.
She showed us a news photo of the candidates for the May Queen.
Oh, yeah, I'm in there. That was back in those days when things were still segregated, and I would run for things not expecting to win, but just because nobody else was doing it. There would be one black person up there, and it was me.
What was that like?
It was very different. You know, I grew up in a time where everything was still segregated in Kansas, and Washburn was a white school, but they allowed Negro, that's what we went by in those days, students, but you couldn't live on campus, so they found a place for me to live in end of town in Topeka. It was a sort of walking distance to Washburn, if you like to walk, which I did.
Did you have to deal with a lot of adversity? You know, any uncomfortable?
Yeah, but it was part of life at that time. It's just the way it was. You dealt with it. You made fun of it.
You made fun of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, I can remember I was telling someone the other day about there was a sign in this little cafe, and it said, Negroes and Mexicans served in sacks only. And I had one art teacher that went in and said, I'd like a dozen, please. And they said, a dozen what? And he said, Negroes and Mexicans. And we all just, fell out laughing. That was just how we treated it.
In college, Betty studied art, graduating in 1950 with her mother, but realized art wasn't for her, and soon applied for a job as a disc jockey at a local radio station, where she auditioned with 3 songs she knew how to play.
I could play St. Louis Blues, and I could play half of Body and Soul, and I can't remember the third.
They asked her to sing, she did, and they put her on the air immediately to try to beat out her competition on another station. A woman called Lonesome Gal.
Because she had this smoky voice, husky when she talked.
Around 1955, Betty moved to Los Angeles with her son Adam. She moved into the neighborhood in Crenshaw, where she lived ever since. She said at this time Los Angeles was